Yo, what is up everybody, it's Jilly here and welcome back to another video. Today we got a pretty intriguing topic, as you can tell by the title. We have biggest plot holes in Naruto. So we're going to be diving into a very intriguing topic and taking a look at a video, shout out to Tobito Zet, on the biggest plot holes in Naruto. Alright, so first off, what is a plot hole? So I got a pretty good definition I think here. What is a plot hole? A plot hole is an unexplained gap between the pretense of one plot point and the contradicting result of another. In other words, it's a mistake made by the writer either based on logic, the rules of the story world, or in the characterization. Say your protagonist has an allergic reaction to peanuts and then later eats peanuts with no reaction. That's a plot hole. Oftentimes, plot holes can be explained with a line of dialogue or a simple action, such as the protagonist was given a miracle drug that rid him of his allergies to peanuts. So folks, plot holes are essentially inconsistencies. Most of the time, when you are viewing quality forms of media, plot holes are minimal and or are very insignificant, so they're glanced over either way, right? Because when there's a very apparent plot hole, it is definitely noticeable by fans, and the more devoted the fan is, the more likely they are to catch onto a plot hole. So a big plot hole could really ruin the quality and delegitimize a show, a movie, etc. Most shows probably have plot holes, but again, they're probably insignificant and very minimal. But I'm very intrigued to see what this video has to say about the biggest plot holes in Naruto. So folks, let's dive right into it. Here we go. Alright, so the first three. First off, alright, let's go from left to right. How did Lee pass the ninja exam? One of the requirements for passing the Genin exam is a shadow clone. So you might ask yourself, if that's a requirement, then how did Lee possibly pass it if he doesn't have ninjutsu nor genjutsu? Well, there's a few trains of thought that you could have to negate this possible plot hole. One, the shadow clone requirement could have been just a yearly thing, and it was just their specific requirement for that year. As we know, Rock Lee, Neji, and Tenten were a year ahead of Naruto and the rest of the gang. So it could be possible that the requirement was something else. Another train of thought is, well, he was such a gifted shinobi when it comes to taijutsu. Well, not a gifted. Let me retract that statement. He was a very hardworking shinobi, and the byproduct of that was his very, very proficient ability to use taijutsu. Hence, he passed because of how good he was at taijutsu. Or another possibility is a guy could have vouched for him and said, hey, look at me, I'm one of the best shinobi in the Leaf. And Rock Lee is headed in that direction. His trajectory will land him in this position one day. So I think you guys should pass him, despite him not having ninjutsu. And the third Hokage might have just said, you know what, he can pass. He can pass. So this isn't necessarily a gigantic or significant plot hole, and it could possibly not be a plot hole at all if you have some of the trains of thought I just suggested. So I guess I could see how this could possibly be a plot hole, but it's highly unlikely, and even if it was, it's very insignificant. But yeah. Stupid Konoha exam system. Shadow clone, a Jonin level jutsu, but is a graduation requirement for the Genin exam. Now, I've read somewhere, now this could be incorrect, that the requirement was just a clone. It didn't necessarily have to be a clone that was even capable of battle. It just had to be a clone that mirrored yourself, right? Because Shadow Clone Jutsu is a B-ranked technique, if I'm not mistaken. I believe, now correct me if I'm mistaken, they just wanted you to create a clone to pass the exam. Right? They just wanted you to create a clone, a simple clone that could stand there, not disappear right away or look nothing like you, or a poor version of yourself. And I think that was all you had to do. Right? Because if a shadow clone was the case, right, if the requirement was for a shadow clone, that would be contradictory, because it's a B level technique and it's a Jonin level technique, and these are just mere children that are barely starting their career as shinobi. So there's some ways to kind of negate the fact that this could be a plot hole, right? Possibly. Naruto's age. If Naruto failed the exam 3 times, how is he the same age as his peers? That's a good question. That's a good question. Maybe they started him early. You could think of it that way. Maybe they started him early. Maybe he's older. Or maybe it really is an inconsistency. Maybe it really is an inconsistency. Some people would ask, why would they start him early? Well, he has the Nine Tails in him. Maybe they expected him to be great. He is Minato's son. Maybe they expected him to be great. All right, there's a few ways that you could kind of deduce how this could make sense. Or you really could just say it's a very insignificant plot hole. Either way, it's a good question. It's a good thing to think about. And it's a good observation. Alright, next 3 here. Here we go. Orochimaru wants a Sharingan. Why didn't Orochimaru try to take any Sharingan before the Uchiha massacre? This really isn't a plot hole because maybe he knows he'd get his ass whooped by the Uchiha. The 3rd Hokage would have a problem with that. Danzo, Fugaku, Shisui was out there, Itachi was out there. You think it would be as simple as him just going into the leaf and taking a fucking eyeball out of an Uchiha member? That's not a plot hole at all. That makes perfect sense why he didn't do that. It makes perfect sense. Perfect sense, actually. I don't see how this is a plot hole at all, to be honest with you. There's many reasons why he didn't do that. Many reasons. Alright, next one. Uchiha clan. Itachi killed the whole Uchiha clan in one night. How were they all at home that night? Maybe because they were sleeping? I get what it's asking though. Why weren't some of them on missions? Well, take this into account. They were segregated. I'm sure there were restrictions on their ability to wander out of the village. More specifically, in their section of the village, which was segregated from the rest of Konoha. It makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. The police corps was in the police department. You know, all the older Uchiha were probably asleep. And segregation is probably the reason why they were all there that night. Right? So, it's really not too hard to answer this question. I get where it's coming from. How could it be possible that they were literally all there in the village that night that it happened? Well, again, segregation. There's probably regulation that doesn't allow them out. I mean, that's not hard to fathom, considering how much of a tyrannical individual Danzo was and how adamant he was on keeping them segregated. He was a more extreme version of Tobirama. It makes perfect sense. This isn't hard to fathom. You can kind of stretch it and try to make it a plot hole, but it really isn't, in my opinion. Has Kurama always been kind? Biju free if the host dies. Why did Kurama try to help Naruto when he could die? Alright, so here's a simple answer to this question. Kurama feared Madara. Kurama feared Madara. And if Minato thought that Obito was Madara, it's not hard to fathom that Kurama thought he was Madara. So, he had a choice to make. Would he rather just deal with this annoying kid, Naruto Uzumaki, or would he rather risk being manipulated by Madara Uchiha, or who he thought was Madara Uchiha? Right. So he had a choice to make. He had to pick the lesser of two evils, and the lesser of the two evils was living inside of Naruto Uzumaki. Right. And it's safe to say as time went on, he started to bond to Naruto, even before they were quote-unquote friendly. He saw what Naruto was becoming. This isn't really a plot hole at all. He feared what was out there. He feared being manipulated and used like a fucking dog and a pet. That's why he hated humans. He'd rather stay in an area where he's safe. And to stay safe, Naruto had to stay alive. So it's really not hard to comprehend this. Not really a plot hole at all. Let's continue. Alright, so next 3. Element's weakness. Why does lightning beat earth? It doesn't make any sense. Okay. Well, you would have to presuppose that the way Naruto's universe works the same as our universe. As we know, the moon in Naruto is hollow. Hence, it wouldn't be hard to fathom that chemistry might work differently in the Naruto verse. Not every universe operates the same, so it's not hard to fathom. Maybe Naruto's universe works differently. And maybe it just works differently, conveniently, to fulfill the plot's purpose. Alright, so we had earth, lightning, fire, wind, and water. And we wanted a weakness for each. Alright, as simple as that, I'd say. It's not really a plot hole, I would say. It might be inconsistent to our real reality, right? To our tangible reality. But it's not necessarily a plot hole nor an inconsistency within that universe itself. So, this isn't really a plot hole at all. Kamui. Why doesn't Kakashi go blind from Mangekyo overuse? Gradual stamina increase. And he does greatly fatigue from using it early on. He used Sharingan part 1 Naruto, he was out. When he used Kamui for the first time against Deidara, I believe he was out for like a fucking week. He was beat from using it. And you could simply say, well, maybe because he's not a actual Uchiha, maybe the blindness doesn't apply. But what will apply is exhaustion, because he can't handle the Sharingan at a level that someone like Obito can, because it was actually his eyes. Also take into account, maybe not every Uchiha is built the same. Obito spammed Kamui until the day he died. Blindness was never an issue. But either way, there was some kind of detrimental effect from using the Kamui, which was exhaustion. Right? Exhaustion. Itachi was the one that was infamous for going blind. And it makes sense why Sasuke started to go blind. Right? I mean, Sasuke was his brother. They're very genetically similar. So he started going blind himself. Maybe it was a genetic predisposition. But it seems the commonality is exhaustion. Right? Some sort of exhaustion. And Kakashi's was just physical exhaustion. He would exert himself and be out. Be done. He had to be bedridden because he was so messed up from using the Mangekyo. So, again, this isn't really a plot hole. The only one that is most likely a plot hole was Naruto failing the Chunin exams 3 times. How is he the same age? Even that, you could use some rationale. Possibly. It's more of a stretch, right? But the rest of these really aren't plot holes, I'd say. You could explain them pretty easily. So far. Naruto's Senjutsu is better. One of Nagato's bodies absorbed Jiraiya's toad oil even though it was Senjutsu. Well, keep this in mind. When the Path of Pain turned into a toad, he was physically touching Naruto, absorbing his Sage Chakra. Here, it seems that the Path of Pain is just absorbing the actual ninjutsu being thrown at him. Alright. Fire, I think that's wind, that's like mud, so probably a combination of earth and water. So you could just logically deduce that maybe that Path of Pain can absorb ninjutsu despite its source, but it actually can't touch a sage. So you can make some kind of logical conclusion to why this is. Again, someone can counter and say, well, this chakra, well, the chakra behind the said ninjutsu is Sage Chakra. So why is he able to absorb it? I get that. But maybe there's some differing properties when you're comparing ninjutsu versus the actual sage. It makes sense and it negates the plot hole, right? So far, like I said, almost all these possible plot holes could be explained, negating the fact that they're possibly plot holes. All right, let's continue on. Okay, the next three. How Obito controlled Yagura. Controlling a human being was only stated to be done by Shishui's eye? Okay, so this is saying that it was only ever stated that Shishui could control the will of an individual. So it's asking, how could Obito do that if he doesn't have Kodo Matsukami? Well, this just speaks testaments to Obito's ability to use Genjutsu. Right? He was able to manipulate Yagura for years on end with his Genjutsu. It just speaks testaments to him. Not everything has to be blatantly stated for it to happen. Right? He just happened to control Yagura for years on end. It speaks testaments to what Obito is capable of. I'm sure Itachi, if he really wanted to, could manipulate somebody himself, right? He was essentially the god of Genjutsu with his Tsukuyomi. So I don't see how this is really a plot hole either. This could be simply explained by stating, well, Obito has great Genjutsu. Great Genjutsu. It's as simple as that. You know? Simple as that. Susanoo. Itachi was disconnected from Susanoo when sealing Nagato. I get what you're saying, right? We don't really see anyone else do that. We don't see anyone else get out of their Susanoo and Susanoo's able to move on its own. We usually assume that it's just a part of them, right? Like they have to be in the middle of it because it is them. It's a essence of their will, similar to the Green Lantern, right? It's a good example or a good analogy. I can see how this is a plot hole, I suppose. But we can just simply say, well, this is a possibility. Right? It's not a clear inconsistency. It seems odd. I'd say that. It seems odd. But again, it's also insignificant because who really remembers this? Does anyone remember this and points this out and has an issue? I would say most people would say no. But I get it. It seems odd. We don't really see this any other time. I'm pretty sure this never happens besides this one time. So I get it. Okay, this is just telling people to leave a like. Let's continue on. Alright. Ibiki and Kari. He did not use his techniques to torture Kari. I can see how that is odd. Maybe he saw Karin just seemed like a good soul, or maybe to him it seemed like she didn't know much, which would be odd because he is supposedly the best interrogator in Konoha, right? He's the leader of that division. Yeah, this is an odd one. I'll admit that. He didn't go all in on her. But then again, maybe behind the scenes he got what he needed. Who knows? I doubt he did because Karin is very adamant on being loyal to Sasuke since it's clear she was like in love with him. She simped for him, right? She was a simp. So, yeah, inconsistent, I agree. A possible plot hole. Again, very significant. I never even realized that. Me personally, and I'm a huge fan of Naruto. A hardcore, clearly. But yeah, very odd. I can't really ration why he wouldn't do that. I could, but it wouldn't make sense. Alright, Kushina and Naruto. She told story of what happened during Naruto birth, but she wasn't there for most of it. I'm not sure what this is saying. She wasn't there for most of it during the birth of Naruto. Isn't she his mother and gave birth to Naruto? I'm assuming this is saying what Minato went through when he was battling Obito. It isn't hard to imagine what happened, right? I mean, he was fighting somebody. I don't see how this is a plot hole. I don't understand what's trying to be said here. I really don't. I'm just gonna move on. Animator's error. Obito lost his right arm to Minato, but the Zetsu arm is his left. I think Zetsu was just aiding him entirely. Zetsu was present inside of Obito or on him or whatever and aided him when he was injured, despite which side of the arm it is. So I don't really get what this is trying to say, but okay. So this one in particular is very odd. I agree. Why would he show sympathy to someone he barely knows, like Kari? Maybe it was her girlish charm, which I highly doubt because he's supposed to be this callous and calculated man. So this one's odd, for sure. These two are easily explained in my opinion. Let's continue. Alright, next three. Edo Tensei moment. Deidara blew himself up and yet Kabuto reanimated him. There is no blood or body. Okay. Now, I think there are several examples of this. Kakazu was thrashed by Naruto. Itachi was blooded and battered by the time he passed away. And Deidara blew himself up. And I'm sure there are other examples. Zabuza was pretty thrashed when he died. I think the Edo Tensei simply rebuilt them to what they were at that specific point in time. At what they were healthy. Right? Obviously slightly nerfed, but it kind of rebuilds them up to what they were prior to whatever took them out. So I don't see how that really is a plot hole. I really don't. Imbalanced jutsu. Deidara never used C0 when reanimated. Maybe because he was defeated before that happened. And he has to get to a very, very stressed point to resort to that. Right? So I don't see how this is a plot hole either. This is like his trump card. You can just claim, well, maybe he didn't want to off himself again. Maybe he wanted a second chance. In his mind, maybe he's like, well, I'm back again, and I'm not going to waste this opportunity this time. And he was a very prideful man, prideful shinobi. So I don't see how this is a plot hole either. I really don't. Alright, Obito moment. Why did Obito need reanimation for passive pain? They don't need to be alive. Well, didn't Kabuto do that favor for him? Reanimate him? I mean, why can't they be reanimated? It's irrelevant either way. I don't see how that's a plot hole. It's not an inconsistency to me either. I really have nothing to say about this. This isn't really a plot hole at all. This is just a insignificant question to a insignificant problem. It's not really a problem. It's like a subtlety. But yeah, I really have nothing to say about that. That's not even a plot hole at all. I don't need to explain that. It's just, it is what it is. They're reanimated. That's all. That's it. So continue on. Alright, why? Obito never absorbed any jutsu until becoming Jinchuriki. Well, he did state that even one Rinnegan was very heavy on him, and he was already exerting himself, controlling 6 Jinchuriki simultaneously who were fighting off his will to control them. If you remember correctly, they were trying to fight it off. So maybe he just didn't want to risk exhaustion in a very important time. Right? He was fighting Naruto, Guy, and Kakashi, while also controlling 6 Jinchuriki simultaneously. When he became Jubito, he had a great amp in every significant factor as a shinobi: speed, strength, stamina, etc. So obviously he could easily use every ability that Rinnegan has to offer at this point. Before that, he had a lot on him, a lot on his shoulders, right? The Rinnegan's very heavy, carries a lot. So it's pretty easy to explain why he didn't absorb any jutsu until he became a Jinchuriki. Maybe he assessed it'd be better not to risk exhaustion, right? So the arc of war makes no sense. I mean the war arc, right? If Obito didn't need the 8 tails and 9 tails for the 10 tails, why start the war? The point of the war was the infinite Tsukuyomi. The rest of the shinobi world didn't want that to take place. So, first off, that was the main objective of Obito and Madara. 2, he did need the 8 tails and 9 tails, right? It wasn't optimal to summon the 9 tails the way they did because they didn't have the entire 9 tails and 8 tails, right? They had a trace of each, thanks to Kinkaku and Ginkaku's gourd having a trace of the 9 tails, plus thanks to Sasuke getting, I believe, a tentacle of the 8 tails. So they had some chakra. It wasn't optimal, right? It'd be more optimal to have the entire 8 and 9 tails. However, they had what they needed. They had the prerequisites met. So the war was for the infinite Tsukuyomi, first off. So the war does make sense. This isn't really a plot hole. And in fact, this is incorrect. So I don't get what this is trying to do here. This is incorrect. Mizukage bled in Edo Tensei. In the anime, they very specifically say that reanimations don't bleed. Well, I think the point of emphasis is that they don't take harm the same way as in a live person, right? They're essentially immortal until they're sealed away or destroyed by a 6-pass tier character with true Sukin orbs. So, the fact that he bit his thumb to summon his summoning is very insignificant. If it is specifically stated that they don't bleed, which I'm not sure to be honest, admittedly, then yeah, this is a slight insignificant inconsistency. He bit his thumb. But if it doesn't say that specifically, then this isn't a plot hole. I'm starting to question the legitimacy of this setup because this is incorrect. He did the 9 tails and 8 tails were required for the 10 tails emergence. So let me know if this is specifically stated that they don't bleed. Because if it is, then this is an inconsistency, a very insignificant one. But yeah, let's continue on. Alright, next 3. Kishimoto got confused himself. Okay, Raikage said, use Earth as shield against lightning. But lightning beats Earth. I think more so, he was talking about mud walls, right? He wanted walls set up to protect them from his fierce abilities of one-shotting them. And yeah, and despite lightning being superior to Earth, that's the best they could do against him. He was essentially a demigod compared to them. They had no shot at defeating him until Naruto showed up. Alright, so I think it's as simple as that. It was more so for just defensive purposes. Defensive purposes. To even stand a chance of surviving. It's not really a plot hole. Battle conventions. Sasuke's Amaterasu against Kabuto's Sasuke's Amaterasu against Kabuto forms a circle but doesn't touch Kabuto. Again, similar to this, defensive maneuvers, defensive strategy. It was to keep him at bay. It was to keep him at bay more so, I would say. And I don't see how this is a plot hole. I get it, you want to, summon Amaterasu on Kabuto and hit him with it. However, I think this was more of a defensive maneuver. I think it's as simple as that. As you could tell, it's surrounding him, protecting him from Kabuto, at least for the moment. Not really a plot hole. Again, this is just a stretch to try and find a plot hole, which kind of illuminates the small amount of significant plot holes there are in Naruto so far. Itachi under Kodo Matsukami. He does nothing when Sasuke says he's going to destroy the village. Well, logically you could deduce the greatest threat at that moment in time was Kabuto's reanimation jutsu. That was the prioritization. That was what was emphasized by Itachi when he gave himself the order of protecting Konoha, protecting the Shinobi world. You can rationalize within yourself if you're Itachi, well, Naruto's going to take care of that, which is what he told Naruto. You'll take care of Sasuke. I'll take care of Kabuto and the reanimation jutsu. So that's not really a plot hole either. It wouldn't make sense. In fact, it would be illogical if Itachi went after Sasuke instead of Kabuto. That would make less sense. So, yeah, I don't see how that's a plot hole, honestly. I don't. Continue on. Alright. Pain Path are just puppets. How is Jiraiya able to use Genjutsu on bodies controlled by Nagato? You can simply rationalize and say this. These puppets are linked back to Nagato. So when that auditory Genjutsu was used by Jiraiya, it hit Nagato, hence disabling the paths until they were freed by, I believe, the other paths, or whatever the case was in that battle. So these are linked back to Nagato. That's why in the past I've used the argument, well, I believe visual Genjutsu would work too. Right? That's contentious, of course. It is contentious. But if it did work, it'd work the same way this did. It would link back to Nagato. That's essentially what happened. Because it links back to Nagato, this auditory Genjutsu hit him, hence disabling the passive pain, or at least handicapping them for the moment. So that's pretty easily explained. It's not a plot hole, really. Kusanagi sword. The Sasuke's Kusanagi sword cannot be blocked, but then this is forgotten. Maybe you could just simply say, well, it can't be blocked by anyone weaker than him or relative. Maybe someone stronger can block it. Someone like maybe the Raikage, someone like a Hokage level threat could block it. Right? So, it's as simple as that. Itachi's lie. Itachi said you need Mangekyo to control Nine Tails. Obito did it with base Sharingan. Again, Itachi was always undercover at all points in time. So you could take what he said with a grain of salt, such as when he said Jiraiya would kill both him and Kisame. Obviously he was exaggerating what would really take place. Kisame and Itachi would defeat Jiraiya. But he had to paint this fake narrative to avoid having to fight a fellow Konoha shinobi. Right, so everything that Itachi says could be taken with a grain of salt. Definitely. Again, this also speaks testament to his Obito Genjutsu ability. He was able to control the Nine Tails. Something that only Madara Uchiha has done before. Very impressive. Let's continue on. Alright, that's the end of part 1. Luckily for us, it's a part 2. So let's get straight to it. See what these plot holes are. Alright. Madara Edo Tensei release. They both hate each other. Why would Tobirama show him the signs? Madara is a genius. One, maybe he saw Tobirama do it before and he simply remembered. He does have a Sharingan after all. So this isn't hard to explain. Would Tobirama show him the signs? You could deduce that possibly he could have when they were still friendly, when he was still friends with the Leaf and Hashirama. Not hard to explain why that is. Not really a plot hole. Base Madara so strong. Kabuto summoned Madara for a very long time, but Orochimaru summoned 4 full Kage in 5 minutes. Kabuto is a poor man's Orochimaru, as far as intelligence, IQ, etc. And keep in mind, he summoned many shinobi, not just 4. Yes, those 4 that Orochimaru summoned were very powerful. In fact, so powerful that he stated that one of them could break out whenever he felt like it. But Kabuto summoned a lot. That, and he isn't what Orochimaru is. And as far as IQ, as far as ability, he might be stronger because he's a perfect sage when he becomes Sage Kabuto, but this is very explainable as well. Not a plot hole that's apparent and significant and can't be explained at all. So, Hashirama's plot armor. Madara never uses fire style against Hashirama's wood style. Hashirama was a god amongst boys, right? I would simply say maybe Madara knew better than to use fire style. Maybe Hashirama's deep force emergence or wood abilities were so extreme that Madara would just be better off using other strategies against Hashirama. So I wouldn't really say it's plot armor. I really wouldn't. Let's continue on. Alright. WTF. Madara was blind and yet he still used all of his Rinnegan and Sharingan abilities. Well, at this point, it's safe to say he was a perfect sage. He had like a combination of Hashirama and his own abilities. The blindness and the ability to absorb ninjutsu, that is a little odd. But it's Madara Uchiha, you could simply say that. That might be an appeal to ignorance, right? An appeal to ignorance argument, that's fair. But Madara Uchiha was stronger than he ever was when he had Hashirama's abilities here, right? So we were basically in unfamiliar territory with him. He was so strong that we were in unfamiliar territory where we see him do things that we really haven't seen another shinobi ever do. You could simply explain it that way. I wouldn't really say it's a plot hole. Yeah, it's a little weird that he's blind and he's using these abilities, right? It's a little odd. But again, we're in unfamiliar territory with god level shinobi at the time. They were the top of the food chain at the time, right? So it says a lot about society. Sasuke lost Susanoo after going blind, but Madara doesn't. Again, they're in 2 completely different tiers. Completely different tiers of power. They're not even comparable. So it's as simple as that. Sasuke was much weaker than Madara. Madara was gaining Hashirama's abilities, and I think he already had them even before he was doing what he's doing here in this image. Right, so much different. They don't compare in the slightest. So he's basically regenning. Also, he's the Edo. So there's that. Kishimoto logic. Edo Madara couldn't be a Jinchuriki, but Edo Minato could. I don't understand what he's trying to say. He couldn't be a Jinchuriki. He was Jubidara. He was a Jinchuriki. What the fuck are you talking about? I don't understand what's going on here. This is incorrect. He was a Jinchuriki. He was a 10-tailed Jinchuriki after Jubito was defeated. The fuck are you talking about? Let's continue on. Alright, here we go. Why does he only use the ability when he comes back to life? Limbo. Maybe because he sees threats that are significant enough to where he has to use that ability. Against the 5 Kage, they were fodder. They were fodder. When he comes back to life, Naruto and Sasuke are becoming more and more powerful. Right? They're becoming more and more powerful. So he sees that they're becoming a more and more considerable and significant threat, to the point where he has to use this kind of ability. It's as simple as that. Not really a plot hole, once again. Still blind Madara. Madara's rods on Hashirama didn't disappear after Madara lost his Rinnegan. I mean, I've never seen an example of where someone loses their Rinnegan and rods disappear, though. I've never seen that before. So, I don't see how this is a plot hole. Because from my observation and my knowledge, there's nothing to suggest otherwise, right? So, again, another grasping in an attempt to point out a plot hole. This is not a plot hole. Nerfed Rinnegan. Susanoo isn't Senjutsu chakra. Why can't Rinnegan absorb it? If you remember correctly, though, Nagato was blitzed on several occasions by Itachi. He didn't have time to react. So, he didn't have time to absorb anything. He did absorb Amaterasu, but he was blitzed by Itachi. I think on 2 occasions. So, that's why. Okay, if Nagato has Madara's Rinnegan, why can't he use base Sharingan abilities? Swakage overlooked this issue? What? So you're presupposing that just because Madara had a Sharingan prior to him awakening his Rinnegan, he's gonna have the ability to use both? I think that's faulty logic. The Rinnegan and Sharingan are 2 different dojutsu, with the Rinnegan being considered the superior one, right? It's always linked back to the Sage of the Sixth Pass. Weak Akatsuki. How come it took the Akatsuki 3 days to extract the Biju, but Obito did it in minutes? I think Obito was at a point where he was significantly stronger, and the way they did it was the more formal way, and it assures that you extract every ounce of the Biju. So I wouldn't say that means they're weak. I mean, they are weaker than Obito. That is correct in comparison to Obito. But I don't see how this is a plot hole at all. I really don't. Again, it seems to be normal now. Obito moment. If Madara was able to get the Tail Beast with Ghetto Rods, why didn't Obito do the same? Obito, okay. So they're saying if Madara was able to just pull the tailed beasts like mere pets towards him, why didn't Obito do it? Again, the gap in power. Again, Obito had a tough time with the Rinnegan. It was very heavy on him. Madara, it was his Rinnegan. He was significantly more powerful at that point than Obito was. It's a simple gap in power. It's a simple power scaling. Simple as that. None of these are really plot holes, honestly. I think there was one that was back there, but let's see what else we have here. Alright, like Sasuke and Boruto, Obito Right Eye is short range Kamui, but during the war, these rules were broken. These rules were broken. Okay. So I would need to see the exact moments where these rules were broken, because I don't really recall, again, illuminating the insignificance of this in the first place. But yeah, that would be inconsistent because the case has been Kakashi has a long range Kamui, Obito has a short range. So I suppose this would be an inconsistency. A very insignificant one. But either way, yes, if that's the case, then yes, I agree. Inconsistent. Alright, so this Gudodama moment. Why did the second and third Hokage recover after getting hit with Obito? Yeah, that is interesting, right? Because Tobirama did state if you get hit by Obito, you won't regenerate. So that's a good question. That is a good question. How did they recover if Tobirama states these truth-seeking orbs or these, this kind of material, if you're hit with it, you're done. Even if you're in Edo, you don't regenerate. Good question. That is an inconsistency. If someone has an explanation or something I overlooked to why they did recover, please let me know. As far as I know, that seems inconsistent to me. Chakra moment. If they have unlimited chakra, why did Tobirama run out of chakra during the war? This is the way I look at it. They have infinite chakra, meaning they never get exhausted. But I think when using any such set ability, there's only so much they can exert on that such set ability, right? Like if, let's say Madara is using fire style jutsu, I tend to believe he can't use it infinitely, right? Like just spam it for eternity without stopping it, is what I mean. So I think they do have infinite chakra, right? Like it will just refill right away. But I don't think that means they could spam things for eternity. Because if that were the case, we would have seen that. We would have seen Itachi eternally spam Amaterasu or something like that. Or Nagato spam multiple Chibaku Tenseis like it's nothing. So I think it's more so they recover infinitely. That's the way I look at it, right? It's headcanon, but that's the way I look at it. So I get what this is saying, but I think you can explain it with some rationale. Right? But I get it. Madara uses Kamui. Original Eye Owner, Obito, couldn't use Kamui, while a Jubi, but Madara could. Interesting. Here's what I would say. 1. Madara gained control of the Ten Tails much quicker than Obito did, right? Obito had doubt and almost lost himself. And 2, I don't think he even really needed to use it because he was blatantly superior to everybody. He was blitzing the Hokages, whipping ass. But I get it. Towards the end, when he's being pressed by Sage Ninjutsu with Naruto and Sasuke, why didn't he use it, right? If Jubidara could. I guess you could assume that is somewhat of an inconsistency. Right? Somewhat of an inconsistency. Because Madara was able to use it, but Obito wasn't. Maybe it was due to Obito being an imperfect Jinchuriki, possibly, compared to Jubidara, who had the entirety of the 9 and 8 tails. Who knows? There's rationale for it. But it is pretty headcanon-y. This is sort of inconsistent, especially considering, yes, Obito was the original Eye Owner. I agree. Inconsistent. Is it significant to the story? No, it's not. It's not a gigantic plot hole in my opinion, but yeah, I understand. Madara create like 20 planetoids. Madara's Chibaku Tensei doesn't capture any people, only rocks. Well, to be fair, he kind of brings them from the sky, like they're already made, right? Like when he dropped them on the Shinobi Alliance, this is way before, when he was still in Edo. He kind of already had them pre-made, like, who knows, maybe he created them in Earth's atmosphere to where the gravitational pull doesn't reach down, right? Something like that. That's what it seemed like. He never, like, summoned the Chibaku Tensei from Earth like Naruto did when he tried to capture Naruto when he was in his 9-tail state. That's the way I look at it. The gravitational pull didn't reach because Madara would usually do it from the sky, high up, to where the gravitational pull would be significant enough to pull people towards it. That's the way I look at it. It is canon-y, but it makes sense. Alright. Someone can counter and say, well, his Chibaku Tenseis are massive. Wouldn't the gravitational pull suffice and make people get drawn towards it because his Chibaku Tenseis are so much bigger than Nagato's? That's fair. But it's kind of ambiguous how high up in the sky these Chibaku Tenseis originated. Maybe he created them from fucking rocks that were going around Earth's orbit. Maybe it wasn't even from Earth. Who knows? It seems to make sense. Not exactly a plot hole in my opinion. It's explainable is what I'm trying to say. Let's continue. Alright. Kodo Matsukami. Dead people can't be placed under Genjutsu, but Itachi placed himself in Kodo. Okay, I understand where this is coming from. Right? The Infinite Tsukuyomi stated as the strongest Genjutsu ever, yet wasn't able to put Edo's into a dreamlike state, while the Kodo Matsukami was able to affect Itachi. I see where the concern is, right? But I believe Seth speaked on this. I believe he said they just essentially work differently, right? The Infinite Tsukuyomi puts people in a dreamlike state. And this is the way I look at it. They have different properties. They achieve different purposes. The Kodo Matsukami controls your will, right? It controls your will. And Edo Tensei is all about will, right? So you're under the will of the user. However, Kodo Matsukami overrided that and caused Itachi's Edo to follow a different will. The will of the Kodo. Now, Infinite Tsukuyomi puts you in a dreamlike state. And only people that are alive dream, right? People that are actually alive dream. Maybe you could argue maybe it's part of their brain. Maybe the Edos don't even have that part of their brain turned on no more. Because I would argue they probably don't even need sleep because they're dead already. Well, partly. So they work differently. You could argue they affect different parts of the brain, etc. So I wouldn't really say this is a plot hole. Now, if it was the case that Kodo affected one and not the other or something like that, that would be a huge inconsistency. But this is explainable, and I don't think it's really a plot hole. But I could see the concern. You could argue that it is. This is an arguable one. I'll admit that. Kaguya doesn't use Genjutsu. She has the strongest Genjutsu in the entire series, Mugen Tsukuyomi. I can simply say this. Kaguya's fucking stupid, bro. She's dumb as hell. She's dumb as hell. She falls for sexy jutsu from Naruto. She needs fucking advice from bitch-ass Black Zetsu. She's stupid as fuck. She gets caught by Sakura from behind. She's dumb. That's all I have to say. Not a plot hole. Kaguya doesn't try to kill Sasuke, but she could have easily killed Sasuke before Naruto. She looked at them as her children. So the way I look at it is she was punishing her children, doing what she had to, but she was a little reluctant. Plus she's stupid again. Not really a plot hole once again. She's just stupid. She looked at Naruto and Sasuke as her children, reminded her of Hagoromo and his brother, and that's as simple as that. That's why she wasn't so hell-bent on this eliminating them and one-shotting them. Simple as that. Continue on. Alright. Tobirama. Tobirama is a sensory type and couldn't tell that Madara buried his shadow clone. I think sometimes sensory requires focus, and maybe I believe Tobirama was occupied battling. Maybe that's why he didn't sense it. It seems like he has to focus to sense things, right? Like Karin, like Tobirama, like all the other sensory types. And when he's in a state of battle, maybe he's just not focusing on it. It's explainable. Double standards. Double standards. Alright. Madara died immediately after the Ten Tails was removed, but Obito survived. What happened with Madara was different than what happened with Obito. I wouldn't call it double standard. Obito was defeated by Naruto and the Alliance, right? They essentially pulled the 10 tails out of him, or whatever the case was exactly. Madara was absorbed by Kaguya. And you didn't see Madara until after they sealed Kaguya. You see him again. So it wasn't the exact same thing. That's a false dichotomy. It's a false dichotomy argument because it wasn't the same. It wasn't A or B. It was different for both. So that was not a plot hole. Incorrect. Ramen guy. Why are ramen guy eyes always closed? I'll tell you why. Because he is omnipresent. He doesn't need vision. He senses things around him. He is omnipresent. He knows all things. And he survives all encounters. Think about it. The pain arc, the war arc. He's still standing. His business is still standing. Fucking Momoshiki and Kinshiki coming down to earth. You still see him selling ramen. He is omnipresent. Simple as that. He doesn't need vision. Not a plot hole. It's just reality. Let's continue on. Alright, that was the end of that. And there you guys have it, folks. Plot holes in Naruto. My final thoughts on this is most of these were not even plot holes. They were very explainable. Some of them were sort of odd, and you could classify them as plot holes or inconsistencies. And this was an interesting video. It makes you think, and it makes you have to dig deep and kind of ration with yourself why this is, why that is, right? But I would state most of these weren't plot holes at all. They're very explainable. A couple of them were pretty odd, I'd admit. But basically, even the ones that were odd were explainable. So there were none that left me like, oh shit, there's just no way this is possible. This just doesn't make sense at all. I didn't have an encounter with any of these that gave me that reaction. So good video though. Either way, shout out once again to Toby2Z. You know, he made this video and it does make you think. It does make you think. But yeah, it's gonna wrap it up, folks. Let me know your thoughts about all that was said and these possible plot holes that were pointed out by these videos. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm always intrigued. But it's gonna wrap it up, folks. Get this video to 30 likes. I'd really appreciate it. You know, the reason I do this is because of you guys. So if you get that goal, it lets me know that you guys really mess with the content, and I appreciate all the support as of late. And of course, if you have any other recommendations, let me know in the comment section as well. But that's gonna wrap it up, folks, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay classy.